The biggest victim of Muslim violence is Muslims. When I worked in criminal intelligence, there's a guy who pimped his daughter out so he could get money for drugs. The violence was overwhelmingly between gangs. Kids were killing each other. But to be honest, if you're going to be some sort of gangbanging idiot, so what? Everybody can see with their own eyes. Britain changing around them. Dr. Shola Moss Shog Bang Bing Bong or Narendra Kaur constantly moan about Britain. Why are you here then? 1,000 guys in a day coming across in boats. Oh, this is women and children and they're all engineers and doctors and surgeons. If this guy's going to be my lawyer, I'm going to jail. We're a tiny island that dominated and controlled a third of the planet. Not through being a pussy, not through kindness and tolerance. Industrial scale rape of British children? That doesn't sound like a good thing to tolerate. And he's like, Mum, I've killed 10 Jews. And his mum's like, oh, that's so wonderful. I'm going to get your dad on the phone. I can see in a generation or two, Britain's going to be arming Hamas.
Shot directly in the face, having your hands chopped off, being decapitated, being spat on, all in the name of Allah. You've got no idea what's coming. For the last year, I've been working with Ryan from 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐫𝐿, and now they're sponsoring our channel so we can keep bringing you these conversations. 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐫𝐿 are the #1 mentoring program that teaches you e-commerce step by step where no previous experience is necessary. Whilst working with 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐫𝐿, I've seen life-changing money be made and community members free up more time to spend with their families. A successful business is not built overnight, and you would need to put in the work before reaping the rewards. The more you put in, the more you get out. The community are full of like-minded people, all striving for success and all willing to help each other. 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐫𝐿 offer one-on-one training, online courses and group seminars so you get all the support you need to succeed. If you're looking for a new opportunity, get in touch with Ryan via Instagram at RyanJB and he'll take you through all the steps to building your own successful business. Leo.
Hey, how you doing?
Yeah.
All right.
Good to see you, man.
Yeah, good to see you.
Spent a week with you.
In Israel.
Yes.
On our Mossad propaganda trip.
Yeah.
Getting the $7,000 per social media post.
I mean, where on earth did that come from?
I know, and it totally goes against the all the stereotypes of Jewish people. It's like they're so generous and free with their money and they're going to splash out at you.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Yeah, look at the clues. They're notorious for being tight.
Yeah.
The last thing they're going to do is start paying like little influencer $7,000 a post.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was insane. But we'll get into that because since I went to Israel, well, to do what I consider some journalist work, and also find out exactly what's going on there firsthand rather than thinking I'm an armchair expert. And I mean, your work over there was great. But yeah, all the Jew conspiracy theories and being accused of being funded by them because you've been there. Now, I've just come back from Poland. Not one person said, oh, you're funded by the Poles.
Yeah.
But this is all about you. I want to get right into the nuts and bolts and under the bonnet of your life because I loved your company over there. I loved it and I couldn't wait to see you again. So thanks for coming on before we even get going. But tell me about your background and incorporate bullying in your background because you said something on the coach that struck a chord and I thought, I'm going to ask you about bullying.
Oh, yeah, because I think we're talking about bullying and how, because the way society is now, everybody appeals to authority. And that's because for the last 20, 30 years, bullying has been eliminated in schools. And kids are taught that you should go to teacher. If you've got a problem with something, go to teacher and the teacher will sort it out. Whereas when I was growing up, that was the last thing to do. That was like you're being a grass. You're being, you got to sort it out yourself. Teaching kids self-reliance, teaching kids to sort things out themselves is such a valuable thing to do because if you make authority into this ultimate arbiter of what's right and what's wrong, then look what you got. You got a bunch of basically fat communists who think the state can solve every problem. The teacher has been replaced with the government, and so any problem they've got, they're like, oh please, can you sort it out? There's a problem. My rent is too high. Can you sort it out? I don't want to do any work for a living. I want free stuff. Can you sort it out for me? And it's instead of having this sense of self-reliance where you go out and you work for it and you graft for it and you earn it, people are they want the state to sort it out for them. And any conflicts in society, they go for they want the state to sort it out. COVID, they wanted the state to sort it out. What they should have been doing is just getting COVID and dying. Might have to cut that from YouTube. They might still be you know what I mean? The way I see the great leaps forward in Western society, when we made ourselves lactose tolerant, because so much of the world is lactose intolerant, but because we didn't have access to as many calories in the north of Europe, we had to be able to drink milk or we wouldn't have enough calories. So what our ancestors did is we just forced ourselves to drink milk. And like some people died along the way. Some people couldn't handle all the milk enzymes. Some people got terrible IBS, farted themselves to death or whatever. But it meant that over generations, we built a race of people that could drink milk. And then people are like, oh, you're intolerant. It's like, are you joking? I'm descended from people, like you can't even tolerate lactose and you're calling me intolerant? I'm descended from people who force themselves to tolerate lactose. That's how tolerant British people are.
Farting themselves to death.
Yeah.
Fucking hell. Tell me about your background. Tell me what moulded you to become a man that comes out with lyrics like that. Tough upbringing?
No, not really. Man, I grew up in the southwest of Scotland. It was like a paradise. It was like the Shire in Lord of the Rings. Maybe with a bit more like glue sniffing and heroin abuse and stuff. But no, it's very nice, very rural. I mean, I guess there's not much, economic opportunity and stuff. But I wasn't thinking about economic opportunity because mushrooms grew straight out of the ground and you could pick them. You know what I mean? It's like, what an amazing gift from the universe. But I grew up in southwest Scotland. Loved it. Man, I loved it there. My dad's a gunsmith and my mum did like knitwear stuff. And then I worked in criminal intelligence. I sort of wasted my 20s, a lot of my 20s just being a sort of dope. But then I worked in criminal intelligence, worked in national security, and
what's that like?
Then I quit. Criminal intelligence was interesting. I mean, it's kind of interesting. Everything, when something becomes a job. I mean, criminal intelligence is a job. Nobody does it for a hobby. But when something becomes a job, it really becomes a job. And becomes boring.
Did you see stuff that concerned you?
I couldn't believe it. When I went from like working in Westminster, which was obviously, quite a nice, I mean, we had issues with, illegal hot dog sellers and stuff like that. But then I went to Haringey and I saw there's a guy who pimped his daughter out so he could get money for drugs. We saw a completely different level of criminality and a completely different level. Of like the first week I was there, this 16-year-old black lass got shot in the head and killed at a birthday party because some sort of revenge thing. And I always had this idea that, like, criminal gangs, when you get these shootings between gangs, it's always like there's some sort of business reason behind it or some sort of, drug territory reason behind it. And no, it was always just like some dumb escalation. Somebody had called someone's mum a slag and then, so then they punched the guy, so then these guys have to come back with knives and then this guy comes back with guns and, shoots someone. And it always was some idiotic escalation. So it was a real sort of eye-opener to me, like seeing, how a sort of inner-city multicultural society can function and not function, and seeing the level of violence and sort of just complete sociopathy that some people have.
I mean, coming from Scotland, there was a lot of violence when you were growing up, I'm assuming.
Not really, because I was out in the countryside. So I mean, there was fights and stuff. But there weren't like killings. Oh, one of my mates, because my dad was a gunsmith and my best mate, his dad was a gunsmith. And my best mate sold a sawn-off shotgun to another kid at school. And man,
as you do.
Yeah, for like a tenner. You know what I mean? And I saw this thing, like made it in his dad's workshop. And it was all like rattly. He hadn't like, because like this kid's like, 15 or whatever. And so he hasn't built it right. And I was like, man, if you fire this, it's going to blow up. It's going to take his hand off. You know what I mean? And like, never mind that, he shouldn't fire it. But yeah, we managed to, put that was an example of, we didn't go run into teacher. We sorted it out amongst ourselves as some reasonable, civic-minded 15-year-olds, one of whom had made a sawn-off shotgun for someone.
And did you grow up loving your country?
I was a lefty growing up, like a real sort of, like really socialist lefty. I think when you're young and you don't have anything, it makes sense. Oh, why don't we just run it this way and share everything? And then you grow up and you realise it's a bit more complicated. So I was very left-wing growing up. And obviously the culture in Scotland, man, I didn't know any Tories, never mind anybody more right-wing than that. Like everybody was left-wing or Labour or, then SNP. So
how deep into socialism did you delve?
I was a surface level socialist. I wasn't like a signed up member of the, Dumfries and Galloway Marxist Society or anything like that. I don't know if there is one.
It's funny because 𝐶𝐨𝐵𝐿, he used to be very much on the left. He used to wear the keffiyeh. I mean, he was full blown gone
yeah.
the other way, and now the pendulum's gone completely to the right, and he beats that drum regularly.
Yeah, well, I used to have a keffiyeh because I used to go diving in Egypt in Dahab, and so I got a keffiyeh because it's actually a really convenient thing. It keeps the sun off you, keeps the dust out of your face and stuff. Now I can't wear it, you know what I mean? Because now it's just associated with these ponces. The thing is, man, when you're growing up, you don't see all the invisible stuff that actually steers your country and provides the foundations, these sort of invisible cultural foundations for these ideas that you have, like libertarianism or socialism. And then when you get older and you see other cultures that don't have these foundations that I guess you'd call our Christian heritage. Treats people as equals and people have autonomy and free will. Like, it's so omnipresent that you don't see it. You know, these cultural foundations for a stable society, and all the ideas that people have that sit on top of that. Like, as soon as you start thinking we can restructure the world this way, and you can see how it went in the Soviet Union or whatever, then I think when people are thinking about that, then they go from being far left to being like, oh, wait a minute, we should get back to those essential core values of Western civilization.
Yeah, it's funny how you mentioned everyone should be treated equal, which in an ideal world that would be ideal, but it's not often reciprocated with particular cultures, which we'd definitely touch base on.
Well, that's another thing, because with mass immigration, like, our ideas of everybody being equal, millions of Somalians being here, or millions of men from the Horn of Africa or the Middle East or whatever, that wasn't an issue back when we developed these ideals of everybody being equal, and I think we're now seeing some of these ideas falling apart, for as much as the left push this idea that everybody's equal, and if you bring a 23-year-old from the Horn of Africa, that's exactly the same as having a 23-year-old who was born in Salisbury and grew up and has generations going back and his ancestors were custodians of the land. No, there's obviously massive differences. If you took the population of Norway and swapped them with the population of Somalia, within a few months you'd have, not even months, immediately you'd have complete chaos in Norway, and you'd have a functioning Western society being built in Somalia. There's differences between people, and I think this is it's been absolutely taboo to say, I'm going to have people in the comments being like, that's racist or whatever. It's like, no, that's just reality of, cultures and societies. We can see that. Look at the difference between Japan and, other countries. Some cultures support, Western civilization, and some cultures don't. And if you bring lots of people from a culture that doesn't support civilization and dump them in a civilization, what's that going to do? Especially if they're coming from a culture with a history of, domination and colonization, a culture that's taken over swathes of the Middle East and Africa and other parts of the world and converted them from, Christian or Jewish or Zoroastrian or whatever, converted them to Islam. What's going to happen when you bring, that culture in? It's not going to be roses. Like, multiculturalism is not this panacea. Multiculturalism is a inevitable road to civil conflict and war. Like, look at where multiculturalism has been tried. Look at Syria, Lebanon, the Balkans.
Summarise the demise of Lebanon for those that just don't know.
So Lebanon was set up, after the British Empire ended, certain countries were set up to be Arab, and Lebanon was set up to be the Christian country. So it had a Christian majority population, like Maronite Christians, whatever they're called. And that was fine. Then over time, due to demographic changes, the higher birth rate in the Islamic population, and also waves of immigration, so refugees from Palestine, hundreds of thousands going in there, and also being armed and funded by Arab countries that wanted to destabilize Lebanon. I mean, is any of this sounding familiar? It's kind of exactly what's happening in the UK now. And like over time, Lebanon just descended into civil war and became an absolute economic basket case. Before that, when it was a majority Christian country, it was Beirut was the Paris of the Middle East. It was the sort of oasis of tranquility and prosperity in the Middle East, and mass immigration from Islamic cultures changed it radically, and now it's still a basket case. Like 20% of Israel is Arab Muslim, but Israel is a really strong culture, so they live in a certain state of peace. I know the history of Israel isn't like 100% peace, but in the UK, we got a culture of appeasement and being a total pussy and acquiescing to any demand. And if anything goes wrong, if there's any terrorist attacks or anything like that, we all like have to fold our hands and say, don't look back in anger, and light a candle and have a vigil and say, oh no, it's the religion of peace. And instead of like being assertive and saying, no, you know what? You're not doing this anymore. You're not doing this anymore. And have, some sort of collective reckoning or a reformation of the culture that's giving rise to these issues.
Yeah, I'm in sheer disbelief. Every single day when I wake up and I read a new tabloid or a new headline or a new story, especially the stories that get suppressed, that I think you and I get first-hand access to, because the mainstream just won't report it. So we've all got these private groups and we get fed these information, even from local people that don't even make the news. And every day I'm thinking, what is it going to take where everybody all say, no, enough. That's enough innocent people that are being killed for my liking. I'm not happy anymore.
Talking about that, I think a preference cascade is going on. So people's publicly stated opinions are changing. And as soon as some people change, it changes quite rapidly. And we're seeing this quite a lot. We see it with, the trans stuff. If you see, Keira Knightley coming out and just laughingly dismissing the trans nonsense, which is how it should have been, treated.
From day one.
From day one, it should have been like that. And that's, that's a high status, influential female with a lot to lose, just openly being like, what are you talking about? Talking about it as if you're talking about a child, instead of, having some sort of, angry argument, just dismissing it. That's such a powerful thing. Sydney Sweeney, when she's essentially accused of being racist or white supremacist or whatever, just dismissing the interviewer and just dominating her and dismissing the question. We're seeing this preference cascade happening with regards to the issues around multiculturalism and mass immigration we've got in the UK as well. I think a lot of it is social media. Today I saw a video of a guy in a hospital who's there's all these illegal migrants, guys that have come across in boats, and they're all skipping the queue for chest X-rays for tuberculosis. And that wouldn't have been shown on the BBC, 10 years ago. Now you can't stop it being shown. Now it goes on Instagram, and because the algorithm rewards what people want to see, the algorithm shows it to people, because people are interested in that. They want to see the truth. And also there's just the reality. Man, in the last, maybe 20 years ago, we had a sort of more sensible immigration system. And now it's insane. Every day, 1,000 guys in a day coming across in boats. And you look at the boat and it's like, the Green Party lassie might be like, oh, this is women and children and they're all engineers and doctors and surgeons. It's like, no, I can see them. If this guy's going to be my lawyer, I'm going to jail. This Eritrean guy with the wet trousers is like, you're telling me he's an attorney? He's going to be my accountant? No, this guy's here. The best case scenario is he's going to ride a delivery bike. You know what I mean? That's the absolute best case. Worst case scenario is he's here to foment instability. He's here to commit jihad. He's here to attack women. So everybody can see with their own eyes. Everybody can see Britain changing around them. And whenever you see these lefty celebrities posting virtue signaling on Twitter, like Deborah Meaden and all the rest of it, there's Callum from we used to do Lotus Eaters. He goes through and finds out, where they live and finds out the demographics of their area, and it's always like
Tunbridge Wells.
It's 98.6% white. People are noticing that the virtue signalers don't live up to their own publicly stated opinions. So the left have got the moral high ground. They've been like, of course we've got to welcome people. Multiculturalism's a boon. Everybody's the same. We've got to be kind and tolerant. Britain's always been a kind and tolerant place. It's like, no, it hasn't. You know what I mean? Have you seen the history of Britain? We're a warrior nation. We're a tiny island that dominated and controlled a third of the planet, not through being a pussy, not through kindness and tolerance. They've said tolerance is the highest virtue. Well, what are you tolerating? You're tolerating the industrial scale rape of British children? That doesn't sound like a good thing to tolerate. How is tolerance a virtue in that situation? So now we're seeing the moral case, the moral argument being won by the right, because the left have managed to convince people for so long that tolerance is and kindness is a virtue. But that's a pretty tough argument to make when you can see what's being tolerated. So now the right are saying, you know what, we need to protect what we've got. We need to protect our women, our children, our culture, our values, our heritage. We need to protect the immigrants who are here and do contribute. We need to protect the people who came here. Like my uncle came here in the 60s. He's Indian. Man, he's the most pro-British, the most just always worked hard. pays tax, like loves Britain, has the flag up. I just feel like he's going to be experiencing backlash because we're just letting anybody come in. Back then, I think there was some sort of selective process where we're like, listen, you got to be able to contribute to society. And now it's just like, no, the left want the people who don't contribute to society because they want to foment instability and they want to bring about a communist revolution.
You're up shit street without a paddle when the migrants don't want immigration no more.
Yeah. And man, they did a survey and like more than half of immigrants don't want mass immigration. They think immigration is too high. It's like, I respect any immigrant who pulls the ladder up behind them. You know what I mean? That is a good thing to do. Also, man, immigrants are really the most racist people, because they would rather come to Britain, which I'm reliably informed by Owen Jones and various other people, Femi, Oddie Wally, whatever it's called. Britain is apparently the most racist place in the world. So these immigrants would rather come to Britain and live amongst white racists than live amongst their own people. I mean, that's pretty racist. You know what I mean? They must really love racism.
Yeah, I actually wonder what genuinely goes through the left's head. If they believe what they say or they say it for effect. Because if they do believe what they say, well, the nearest shrink is where they need to be going. Not fucking Talk TV or whatever news outlet they use to promote their crap. And also pollute the minds of the young. Because eventually their sound bites travel and they are going to creep into the youth. Yeah. And then they're going to grow up to be socialist lunatics.
Yeah, we're seeing it right now, but I think there's also a big swathe of the youth that are growing up in this sort of ultra-feminized left-wing education system that are completely rejecting all of that. And they can see it's all bollocks and it doesn't serve them in any way. And, the left are great at putting out this message that, like, the reason you don't have opportunities, the reason you can't buy a house, the reason you can't get a job is because of billionaires. And it's like, man, it's not because billionaires create wealth, create jobs. Billionaires are great. I'd much rather the government put a hotel full of billionaires in my town than a hotel full of illegal migrants, But a lot of businesses like an uncomplaining third world worker than a sort of entitled Westerner. So young people can now see that they're competing with, the poorest people in the world for jobs, and they're competing with the richest people in the world for accommodation. This idea on the left that like mass immigration doesn't have any effect on the housing market is like, what, is each guy on that boat bringing a semi-detached house with them? It's like, no, obviously they're going to need to live somewhere. You know what I mean? So that's going to push up housing prices and it's going to reduce the quality of accommodation.
They've just plonked 600 fighting age males, migrant men, in an army barracks in the middle of a small town with a population of 20,000 people in the middle of a new housing development. So can you imagine? No. And also, I know through speaking to estate agents in the town that on the day of exchange last week, 3 sales pulled out on the day of exchange. And you can imagine the plummet of those house prices as well.
Man, yeah.
There's just no net positive to what we're doing to ourselves.
Yeah, that's horrific. Is that Crowborough?
Crowborough, East Sussex, yeah.
Right,
it's on the cusp of East Sussex and Kent.
Yeah,
it's near Tunbridge Wells.
Because that is where Rachel Millward, the deputy leader of the Green Party, who's like a posh lady, even though she's a Green Party politician, she's got a big house with a swimming pool. You know what I mean? Got a much bigger carbon footprint than me. And also, like, man, that's the other thing about Green politicians. They're like, they support mass immigration, even though if somebody moves from the Congo to the UK or, any sort of third world country to the UK, their carbon footprint just soars like by an insane amount, by like 20,000%. Because in the Congo, you're not using a lot of carbon. You're not driving a car. You're not, you're living a very low carbon lifestyle. In the UK, because everybody's much richer and has access to air conditioning and cars and all the rest of it, you're burning way more carbon. So the easiest way to instantly reduce your carbon footprint, the carbon footprint of the UK, is to deport lots of illegal migrants, back to the third world countries. But of course, the Green Party don't want to do that because they don't actually care about the climate. They just want to foment communist revolution. Everything is about revolution for the left. But yeah, so she complained that they're putting 600 people in this army barracks because she's the local councillor in Wealdon, I think. So it's not far from her. And it's funny how, like the previous week, she's all like, migrants are welcome here. Oh, migrants, of course, we should take them all. They're all doctors and engineers and surgeons, and they're the most amazing contributors to the one. And it's like, oh, they're going to be near me. Not these ones. Not near my house, near somebody else's house, you know?
Well, that is them to an absolute fucking T. Let's go back to Israel, because
let's go back, man. It was fun.
The fact we spent a week in Israel, we have to touch base on it.
Yeah.
Imagine living in a country where you're surrounded by other countries that hate you and want to kill you.
Yeah.
So there's two questions I want to ask you, and then I'm going to sit back and just take it in. What did you learn from Israel? And I want you to segue into the viewing of the Hamas body cam footage as well.
Yeah.
Just so people back home get an actual flavour of what could potentially happen to us. Because I predict an October the 7th style attack will happen to us, either churches, schools or residential properties. And you and me have both seen what Hamas did that day.
Yeah.
In real time.
Yeah.
It was outrageous. And it made me think, if we don't toughen up back here, we're going to be on the receiving end of a mass slaughter. And we also know, because we were told in the IDF communications headquarters, that David Lammy has been in that room and he's watched the same video footage we have, and I've not seen him condemn or try and stop illegal migration once. That, for me, not only is he thick as shit, he's a dangerous man.
Yeah, but a lot of people on the left, support Islamist terrorism. You see them on Twitter or Blue Sky saying, "This is payback for imperial sins that Britain committed in the past." Even though this 12-year-old boy getting killed with a grenade, wasn't responsible for that. So yeah, people on the left, everything is about the revolution. So they'll support some of that. In Israel, I mean, some of the things that really sort of shocked me were some of the most sort of like maybe least headline grabbing things. So we went to that kibbutz, Kfar Aza. They were telling us that the people they used to give 10, 15,000 work permits to people from Gaza to come and work on the kibbutz and work throughout Israel. Same in the West Bank, they gave like 150,000 work permits so people could come and earn. They earned like 4 times as much as they would working on the Palestinian territories. And those people that were working and for years and were friends with the people that were working alongside and, seen almost as, members of the family and, celebrating birthdays and whatever together. Some of them, maybe not all of them, some of them were collecting intelligence and feeding it back to Hamas. Maybe some of that intelligence collection was under duress. We know that Hamas aren't very nice people, but still, what does that say about Britain? What does that say about the people that we work and live alongside? And that's something that really worries me. We've seen in the Balkans how, people, neighbours, and people who are working alongside, all of a sudden picked up arms against each other. So the sort of Balkanization, the Lebanonification of Britain is a very serious issue. And I think we're seeing it, with the flags going up. We're seeing people stake out territory. Some areas have got Palestinian flags, but some places are still British, and they're seeing British flags go up.
And how have the Israelis stayed alive for so long?
They learned how to handle it. So Israel, the history of Israel is just these countries around it trying to wipe it out every few years. There'd be like some new attack, and the 6-day war. Some of these were, if you looked on paper and if you saw it happening, you'd be like, man, Israel's going to lose this. This is a tiny country. They've got like Egypt, Jordan, all these like much bigger, stronger, militarily mightier countries. The 6-day war, Israel basically saved itself by its air force got in the air and went and shot the Egyptian planes when they're still on the runway. So Israel's always fought, smarter than the countries around it. Now, and especially now that they've got the backing of America. And it's interesting that, back in those days, the left loved Israel because, number one, it had a lot of socialism there. Because socialism can work more in a small country. You got the kibbutzes, which are little sort of, almost communist enterprises. So the left loved it and supported it against these, what it saw as bigger, bullying, aggressor countries like Egypt. Now that's flipped. Now Israel's seen as the bully, even though it's obviously a lot smaller and also a lot poorer than the countries around it, even though everybody thinks it's much richer. Qatar spends way more on lobbying in America, and that's just one country out of 50-odd Muslim countries. But yeah, and also Israel's learned to manage the external threat through force, which doesn't win it the propaganda war, the PR war, but it's certainly won a military war against Hezbollah and Hamas and anybody else who tries to do anything to Iran as well. You know, they hit back hard and they spank their butts and, you know, absolutely, you know, dominate them. But it's also got, you know, 20% of its population is Arab Muslim, and they used to have, you know, a huge problem with suicide bombings on buses and stuff like that. And now they've managed to stop that really through sort of being more assertive. Instead of appeasing it, instead of, you know, brushing it under the carpet, saying religion of peace like we do in Britain, they've just become more assertive. And, you know, wherever the bomber came from, they go into the... What was that guy saying in the West Bank when we went in, or Judea and Samaria, whatever they call it? He said, like, you know, if kids come down and throw stones at the car, you know, we go in and speak to the mayor, and there's action taken against the community that they came from. You know, not you know, horrible, punitive action, but, you know,
it's not ignored.
It's not ignored. It's not appeased. It's not, you know, acquiesced in any way, which is, you know, definitely what we do here. So I think just by being more assertive in their culture, even, you know, like publishing the fertility rate, because the problem we've got in the UK as well is our fertility rate is about 1.4, 1.5, whereas in the Muslim population it's much higher. It's about 2.5, 3, something like that, maybe even higher. So, you know, over generations, the Muslim population is growing much quicker while our population actually shrinks. And you know, added to that, you got mass immigration, which is bringing the population up as well. So in Israel, they published the fertility rates of the native Israeli population and also the Arab Muslim population. And the Israelis are actually higher. Not Israelis, but, you know, Jewish Israelis. Which would be, man, if that was published in the paper in Britain, that people would be like, oh my God, oh, this is so horrific. Oh my God, this is so racist. But, you know, it's sort of, they're just open and honest about it.
Well, the Jews can't seem to do anything right. I mean, you and me spoke to enough Jewish people out there that lived in Britain.
Yeah.
And then they've left Britain to move to Israel in the middle of a war, and they feel safer in Israel than they do in North London.
Yeah.
That's nuts. And the Jewish conspiracy theory that the Jews own and run everything and they pull all the strings, and the higher up the Jews you get, the more demonic it is, and satanic rituals, and they want to take over the world, but by doing that they're willing to sort of kill lots of themselves in the process. I still can't come to a rational conclusion as to where this Jew conspiracy has come from. Yeah. I don't even really understand it still. Like, why the hatred for Jews, and why are people so hell-bent on thinking that Jews are to blame for everything? What was your conclusion to that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I spoke to, you know, Israeli politicians about this, because I think, you know, there's we met that politician who was like, oh, anti-Semitism is just an illogical, irrational hatred. And it's like, no, there is a logic to it on both sides. I see on the left, you know, obviously everyone on the left is, you know, anti-Semitic now. You know, they all chant from the river to the sea. They basically want Israel to be exterminated and eliminated. And that's because Israel is civilization. They hate civilization. Communists hate success. You know, there's that great quote about communism, which is just like, you know, it's basically ugly, deformed freaks who hate success, and so they just want to you know, kill everybody who's successful, and, you know, all the sort of ideology is just is window dressing around that. And there's, you know, I think that kind of rings true. So the left just hate Israel because it's successful. They hate Jews because they're a successful group of people. They got a culture of success. On the right, I think it's more complex. You've got people on the right like me and you and Tommy who you know, see Western civilization as, you know, we've got sort of alliance across Western civilizations, whether that's Poland, whether that's America, whether that's Israel, and we want civilization to succeed. But there's some people on the right who have a bitterness against Israel and against Jews. I think it comes from a couple of things. So, you know, you do have a lot of left-wing politicians. Zacch Polanski, the Green Party, he's Jewish. You've got a lot of NGOs that are run by Jews. You've got a lot of prominent left-wing Jewish voices advocating in the West for mass immigration, you know, defending multiculturalism, and basically, you know, being like lefties, being like Owen Jones. And they see this, the thing is, there's a tendency to see Jews as like, you know, well, that's the Jews. No, that's just those Jews. You know what I mean? All the Jews I met in Israel were like super. Even the left wing Jews were like super based. Would be considered far right here. You know, it's mad. And they're all like, everyone I spoke to was like, what is Britain doing? Why do you have open borders? This is insane. Can't you see the risk that Islam and Islamism is presenting to your country in a generation or two? And and they're right, and I agree with them. But you don't hear those voices in the West so much. So there's this perception that like Jews want Zionism for Israel, but they don't want Zionism for the West. Whereas everyone I spoke to wants Zionism for Israel and wants Zionism for the UK and wants Zionism for Europe as well.
Yeah, so what do you mean by Zionism for Europe and Zionism for the UK?
Essentially, sort of healthy nationalism, having some pride in your own culture instead of being like, oh, there's no nationalism allowed, no pride in your flag allowed. Anybody can come and live here. It's just a borderless economic zone. Being British is just a bit of paper. So Zionism is basically believing in a homeland for your people. I think people have got the wrong idea about it. It's often associated with some sort of ethno-nationalism or apartheid or whatever. Man, you go to Israel, it's like, it's so multiracial. There's there's, as well as the Arab Muslims, there's also like lots of different colors of Jews, which sounds obvious to say it, but you've kind of got to say it because the way people talk about Israel, they're like, oh, it's an apartheid nation. It's an ethno state. It's like, no, it's totally the opposite of that. We met that Ethiopian Jew. It's so different to that.
Well, when we was asking them, is there a genocide? They were looking at us like we were mad. So, well, that's what we're being told back home.
Yeah,
that's what the BBC are telling us, they're in hot water at the moment for their Hamas propaganda they've been pumping and their AI speeches of Donald Trump. Anyone that's been watching the BBC up until now must see this latest scandal and think, shit, I need to challenge my entire ideology. Because if you've believed those little snippets that they've fed you, what other bullshit have you been fed? What other mindset have they moulded you to become?
Yeah.
Because when we asked about the genocide, even Muslims, when we was in Nazareth, is there a genocide here? Is there a genocide in Gaza?
Yeah.
No?
Yeah, and they'll be like, oh, but thousands of people died. It's like, it's a war. What do you think happens in a war? Especially when you're fighting Hamas. It's like this asymmetric war where Hamas are trying to get as many Palestinians killed as possible so they can then parade the bodies and say, look at this horrible, it's the only weapon they've got. They don't have anything that can like militarily defeat Israel. All they've got is the PR war. Israel has really been hamstrung by the fact that, it's fighting this medieval barbarous cult Hamas, and Hezbollah and all the rest of it. But it's trying to fight as a Western country. It's always, fought as a Western civilized country. Whereas, so after the 6-Day War, for example, 1967, whatever, like after, one of its many wars, existential wars, any Arab country would have just eliminated the people it was fighting. It would have just genocided them, driven them out of the country, would have driven them into Egypt or wherever, whatever it would have done. And everybody would have said, oh, this is terrible genocide. But then they'd have forgotten about it by now. 2 weeks later, they've forgotten about it. And, if Israel had done that in 1967, it wouldn't be facing the problems it's facing now. They're sort of being punished for trying to fight by civilized rules. Hamas put the rockets and all the munitions and stuff under a hospital or under a school, trying to get as many of their own people killed as possible because they know that, that's what's going to swing public opinion. And, with this is what the existential threat to Israel is now, with Muslims now being elected to positions of power in Western countries, purely on Muslim issues like Gaza. I can see in a generation or two, Britain's going to be arming Hamas and siding with Hamas because we're not going to be this, this Christian nation anymore. We're going to be some sort of weird hybrid Balkanized nation with, this is Islamic Britain and this is British Britain.
I think we're going to become too petrified of them not to conform to whatever they tell us to do.
Yeah.
That's what I think we'll have because they're just savages, as we saw the body cam footage. Describe to me, before we move away from Israel, because we're going to get accused of being Israeli shills, obviously. But just describe to people listening just how graphic and barbaric the body cam footage that we saw with our own eyes and ears from Hamas going into the kibbutz and the Nova Festival and just what they'd done, including the beheading of soldiers.
Oh man, well, you know that beheading, you know the guy that was on the ground and they're beheading him with a garden hoe. They found this garden hoe and that wasn't even a soldier, that was a Thai gardener. It wasn't even an Israeli, it was an immigrant who'd gone there to work and make money to send back to his family. And they beheaded, and it took a long time to get that head off because they're doing it with a garden hoe, you know what I mean? And they're glorying in it. They're filming it all on GoPros, they're live streaming it on Facebook, and they're being celebrated back in Gaza for doing it. And when they went to the music festival, so they flew in on paragliders into this Nova music festival. This is one of the things that really, stuck in my mind. When I see the pro-Palestinian protests in London, a lot of it is these young, music festival type people. And they're all like, from the river to the sea, which is essentially they're supporting Hamas exterminating Israelis and driving them all out. And then, the whole of Israel can be, this cousin banging paradise. Like, when I see those people chanting and waving the flags, they're the same people that were getting slaughtered at that music festival. It's, young girls with the dreads in their hair, dancing, all peace and love and stuff. And it's like, man, that's their Glastonbury. There's people from all around Europe that went to that. There's a lot of the people at Glastonbury then went to Nova Music Festival. And for some reason, the Glastonbury people side with the people slaughtering the festival goers. It just blows my mind. Like, it's just insane to me. The other thing that blew my mind about it was, remember when that guy, that Hamas terrorist, phones his mum, and he's like, Mum, I've killed 10 Jews or whatever. And his mum's like, oh, that's so wonderful. I'm going to get your dad on the phone. Like, like if I phoned my mum and was all like, oh, you won't believe this, Mum, I found a fiver in the street. It's like, it's that kind of attitude, absolutely glorying in it. And they're like, oh, son, please, kill some more. Don't forget to slaughter the children. Like, what?
Well, his dad called him a martyr over the phone.
Yeah.
He celebrated killing 10 Jews with his bare hands.
Yeah.
He wanted one parent to pass the phone to the other parent so he could share his good news that he was ecstatic about.
Yeah.
He was talking about the female's phone that he'd got in his hand, that he just killed the whore, the dog, all those words. We saw when they went into another compound and they had the National Service young girls, 18-year-old girls in their IDF uniforms hiding under desks, and they're picking which ones to kill, calling them dogs, screaming Allah Akbar, that one's still alive, shoot her in the head, the dog spitting on them. I just couldn't believe my eyes. So when you've got that Bob Dylan chanting death to the IDF, I mean, does he not realise that when you're 18 over there, you do national service? The young girls for 2 years and the young lads for 3 years. So all these innocent children, an 18-year-old in my eyes is a child, so innocent children that didn't ask to sign up to fight no war, are there because they have to be, and they're getting absolutely maimed and slaughtered. And that includes being shot directly in the face, having your hands chopped off, being decapitated, being spat on, all in the name of Allah. When they held them women up hostage in that room with their dead friend in front of them, they still found time to pray.
Yeah.
I mean,
praying next to the bodies.
I spoke to a guy out there. He's an influencer. He's a Jewish guy. Because it was the part of the trip that I was dreading. I didn't want to watch 47 minutes of slaughter. I'm kind of glad I did. It's embedded in my brain, and I know what to fear. And I know I've got every right to be fearful. And I know that when I say to people, you've got no idea what's coming, I can say it with conviction. But I said to this guy, I won't name him in case he doesn't want to be named, but I said, I'm going to watch that video today. He said, okay, just be mindful that it's very heavy. He said, I come away from it thinking I was unscathed. He said it crept in 2 or 3 days later and it took me a year to get over. It caused PTSD just by watching the footage, let alone being on the receiving end or a family member. It was the most heavy-duty thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
But fact.
Yeah.
Never seen anything like it.
It was the sort of callousness of like, because I know people say like, well, the Palestinians could show you, horrific footage of atrocities and stuff. And it's like, yeah, but like,
that's a fair point.
Israel is generally, I know there's been some horrific incidents. I know there was a recent uncovering the tape of, torture and basically, butt fucking of Palestinian prisoners and stuff. But generally Israel is trying to do the right thing and trying not to commit atrocities. Whereas Hamas, when they went into Israel, they were trying they were glorying in it. It was a wonderful thing to slaughter, women and children for them. And the way they were so cruel and callous when the kids were injured, and one of them, his eyes like blown out. And the guy's just like going through the fridge. The Hamas terrorist is going through the fridge being like, you got any orange juice?
As that young lad was there sort of trying to keep his eyeball in place.
Yeah. And like, a little kid, like 7 years old or something, right after his dad has died, basically, protecting the two boys from a jumped on the grenade, man.
It's important also, when you mentioned about the footage or, the evidence that's been revealed that some psychotic IDF soldiers have been raping Palestinians. It's very important that people understand that the likes of you and I, that are more on the side of Israel than Palestine, we don't condone that either. But that's not acceptable. And you're going to get some psychopaths in every corporation, in every team, in every military base, in every army, because you get to a stage where you become a psychopath.
And if you've seen your friends, your family killed by Hamas, the amount of hatred it's going to engender. It's kind of ironic that so many of these lefties are like, they celebrated the Hamas attacks. They're like, this is decolonization. It's like decolonization. It's like Israel's this one tiny sliver of sand. And it was, Tel Aviv was swamp and, worthless land before the Jews bought it and, made it into a civilization. This tiny sliver isn't an Islamic State, and that angers the leftists. It angers the Islamists. It's like they want the last sticker in the Panini album. You know what I mean? It's like they've got to get every single bit. It's like that's the colonizing force. If you want to talk about colonization, if you want to use the words of the left, it's insane. And I think, realistically, Israel is doing what Britain's going to have to do in a generation or two. You might think it's far enough away that you don't need to worry about it. Look how much Britain has changed just over the last 20 years. Just in my lifetime. It's insane. Like how much I've seen Britain change. And now, Jews in Britain are leaving, because Palestinians get to drive around North London, Jewish areas, shouting, we're going to rape your daughters, we're going to rape you, we're going to kill you. Nothing happens. Even though they're filmed, number plates are there, the police know who it is, nothing happens because they don't want to inflame community tensions. Muslims are allowed to commit horrific atrocities in the grooming gangs and nothing happens for decades because they don't inflame community tensions. So Jews are leaving. The next people leaving is going to be Brits. It's going to be native Brits. They're moving I know people are moving to Dubai because they're like, I'm worried about Islamism. And people will be like, well, isn't that insane? You're moving to the Middle East and you're worried about Islam. No, Middle Eastern countries, a lot of them have a real tight grip on Islamism because they've experienced it and they know what can happen if it gets out of hand, if you do appease it.
Well, that's another thing people like to do. They like to conflate Islamist and Muslim.
Yeah.
They're not the same thing. We're not saying that every single Muslim is a problematic fucking warlord maniac.
But what I would say is, all right, there's moderate Muslims. Where are the moderate Muslims in Afghanistan? Where's their influence being felt?
Do you know what? When I say that, I'm kind of talking about the lads that I went to school with that grew up and they didn't really read the Quran and they smoked and they drank and they had sex with Western women. And it's more... Your modern Muslim now is a big concern. And if you don't recognise that, then you could be on the receiving end of some of their heavy-duty ideas down the line.
Yeah. But then my Muslim mates are like, they're like, man, because they don't like mass immigration either. One of them, he's the son of an Egyptian, and he's still he's not totally devout Muslim, but he basically says you're allowed to pick a vice. So his is shagging, and I'm like, pretty sure you're not allowed to pick a vice. But anyway, it's his faith, whatever.
But haram out the window.
yeah. But he says, man, Muslims are here to take over, and you guys shouldn't let it happen. But he's like, is here to take over. And that's coming from a Muslim guy, and I listen to him. He's got the experience of speaking to his parents and his grandparents.
But every Israeli I spoke to, including the soldiers out there, this is without exception.
Yeah.
Because I asked on repeat, because I'm all for peace. What's the cure? What's the solution? How is this ever going to end? Every single person I spoke to, let's just say I asked 50 people that question. That's a lot of people to ask to get the same answer in return. After, they added context and, all the rest of it and previous experience and future and history and projection, and the end answer every time was The moderate Muslims have to speak against the radicals.
Yeah.
It's down to them to save us. We can't. We get accused of being things that we're not. It's the moderate Muslims that need to speak out against their own radical community. Every one of them said that.
Yeah, but like, man, how are they going to do it in Gaza? Like the biggest,
Pick their head.
Yeah, literally the biggest victim. We've seen the executions in Gaza by Hamas or by the different factions now vying for power in the sort of vacuum that's been created by Hamas getting obliterated. Like the biggest victim of Muslim violence is Muslims. That's the same, everywhere in the Muslim world. So yeah, man, I don't know if it's possible for moderate Muslims to speak up. It's not like Britain where or Europe where Galileo is held up as an example as somebody who had more progressive in the good sense, not in the radical lefty sense, but science and reason based thought. He presented an idea that actually the Earth orbited the sun rather than the sun orbited the Earth, which went against the religious teachings of the time, went against the Catholic Church, and he's held up as an example of somebody who's cruelly punished. He's shown the torture equipment and all the rest of it. But man, compared to how people get treated, by the Islamic clerics if they speak out, with look what's going on in Iran. If you dare so much as not wear your hijab correctly, it's it's different. Islam hasn't had that sort of reformation process and been sort of broken apart and criticized and scrutinized and put back together. So its faith is still very it's sort of totalitarian. It's very raw ideology,
completely dogmatic, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, Tommy Robinson has always said that he believes Muslims are victims of Islam. I don't think people have got any idea how compassionate towards Muslims Tommy is, which is completely ironic.
Yeah.
Tommy's always said, I believe Muslims are victims of Islam.
Yeah.
And that'd be interesting to ask you because you shifted from left to right based on what you experienced. If you're presented with new evidence and you see new things, you can go back and change your mind. It's like, okay, well, I got that wrong because I didn't know that.
Yeah, so I got some money now.
Yeah, I've got something to conserve.
Yeah,
well, exactly. But what's your thoughts on the persecution of Tommy right the way around to the resurrection of him?
Well, it's interesting because 10, maybe a bit more than that years ago, Tommy Robinson was like this sort of just a byword for racism and bigotry, and and I believed it because everybody else believed it, so it was just what it was. I didn't question it. I thought, if everybody's saying this, how can it be wrong? If everybody's saying that the sun orbits the Earth, how can it be wrong? And then I remember the thing that really made me start questioning it, because I was following the grooming gang stuff, in a limited capacity, but the thing that really made me start questioning it was when he was lambasted and I think prosecuted for standing on the pavement outside a grooming gang trial, and so he got done for contempt of court because that's he's reporting on a live case or whatever, but it was kind of after the live aspect of it.
It was in the public domain already.
It was in the public domain, and and judges can always go say to the jury, even if it's still a live case, they can turn it to the jury and be like, disregard that. You know what I mean? It's not like it completely, oh no, we can't convict these guys. We're gonna have to let them get away with raping kids because it's a nonsense.
Tommy's on the pavement.
Yeah. So I saw how Tommy was being treated by the media and being treated by people, and everybody's like, this disgusting racist bigot. He's talking about this case on the pavement. I was like, wait a minute, how come all these people are so disgusted about Tommy talking about the case, but they're not saying anything about the actual case itself? They're not saying anything about these guys and other groups of guys doing similar crimes, and they're not saying anything about the culture that enables and engenders those crimes, because those grooming gangs, the way they operated, like a guy would get a 12-year-old girl drunk or on drugs or whatever, and have her incapacitated, and he'd message his uncle, his cousins, his friends, his colleagues, and be like, "Oh, I've got a 12-year-old girl here. Do you want to come and help me rape her?" And they'd all be like, "Oh yeah, brilliant. Should I bring some Doritos?" And it's like we'd organise a game of five-a-side. It's I like to think that if somebody in my social group was organising the gang rape of a 12-year-old girl and sent out a message being like, do you want to come in? We'd be like, no, what the fuck? We'd be phoning the police. You know what I mean? Even though I say you shouldn't appeal to authority, I think there's instances where it's okay to appeal. I think
100%.
12-year-old girls getting raped is one of those instances.
Either that or you take the law into your own hands.
Yeah.
And then you end up in jail, and they would do that to you.
Although the Sikh community did deal, because Sikh girls were getting targeted, but the Sikh guys, who are maybe, less afraid of being called racist, just, went down and flattened the Muslims and sorted it out. But yeah, man, like for that, and when people talk about cultural differences, man, that's the cultural difference right there. You've got a Biradari clan from, the Mirpur Valley in Pakistan, this, remote hill tribe that's been brought to a post-industrial northern town where all the, social structures that would protect these girls have been removed. All the community, the church, the patriarchy, for want of a better word, that would look out for these girls has been taken away. And we've got, this hyper neoliberalism. So, a lot of the smart and capable people move away, and then, you're left with an underclass that's vulnerable. You've got these girls in care homes and stuff. Nobody looking out for them. The only thing that can protect them is the state, is the government. But then the government won't protect them because the government is getting votes from these men that it's imported. So it's a rape for votes scandal. I mean, this is, the whole thing is so cynical and disgusting.
God, you know what? That's chilling.
Yeah.
When you say that out loud and when you hear it as raw as that, it's a rape for vote scandal.
Yeah.
That's devastating.
85% of British Muslims voted Labour under Jeremy Corbyn. They've, now it's less because they've got their own candidates. Because they're getting the votes. Like the Muslim vote pretty much replaced the sort of white working class vote in northern towns for Labour, and now that's dissipated to their own candidates.
I know we've gone straight hammer and tongs into British politics, but you're a comedian.
Yeah.
Is it safe?
Yeah, you wouldn't think it this podcast.
But you know, the thing is, and I get it because, like, what is there to joke about at the moment? Because we're in such a bad state of affairs. It's dangerous out there.
Well, I do jokes about grooming gangs and stuff.
Is it safe to be a comedian now? I mean, when I say safe, do you get much work? Do you get much backlash?
Yeah, I mean, there's some places that won't book me, man. Like, as soon as you sort of come out as right wing, you're. A lot of places will just, your persona non grata. And it's funny because they all talk about, we're inclusive and we're diverse. It's like, yeah, there's still a lot of people you don't want included, and they still have all these shows at the Fringe being like, oh, this is such a powerful message for queer inclusivity. It's like, man, nobody in the arts is like discriminated against because they're like, brown or queer or any other, neurodivergent or whatever. Like, man, those aren't the people discriminated against. Where's the inclusivity panel making sure there's enough Brexit voters represented, on a BBC panel show? That's if you look at the BBC, Dominic Frisby did a breakdown of where all the comedians sit on the sort of spectrum of left to right. And 98% of BBC comedians are left wing, and 2% are Jeff Norcott. That's how they've one guy, so they can say we've got one.
The token right-wing comedian.
Yeah.
Wow. Do you ever feel like you're the token right-wing comedian?
Nah, because I don't get in the BBC.
No.
I'm the one that's very definitely shut out,
But when you go to when you do your comedy shows, do you line up with other comedians? Or do you do just yours on your own? Yeah, no, I still do some club gigs. Like now I've got a family and stuff. I don't do as much as I used to. I used to love doing comedy, being out every night doing it. But as soon as you got a kid, the sort of hunger for that goes because you just want to spend time with your kid. Did you ever clash with other comedians behind closed doors?
Oh, 100%. Ed Byrne, that Irish guy? Before I went on at Just the Tonic in Reading, which is a great club, he was all like, he was calling me a far-right demagogue and all this stuff. And this was because I was standing. And this is something that comedians should have been supporting. I stood for Lawrence Fox's Reclaim Party. I stood against Humza Yousaf just to sort of draw attention to his hate speech bill.
I think everybody should stand against Humza Yousaf.
Yeah, it would have made comedy illegal. And we're already seeing comedians getting cancelled in Scotland. We saw Jerry Sadowitz getting cancelled because, people said they feel unsafe. We've seen Jewish comedians getting cancelled in Scotland because the venue staff, feel unsafe. It's the cowardly way of hiding behind their bigotry. But, Ed Byrne said that I was a far-right demagogue. I had to go and Google what a demagogue was. I thought it was the monster at Stranger Things. But absolute nonsense. It's like everybody in comedy, there's people in comedy who are full-blown tanky communists, and they don't get any grief.
Think about some of the stuff Frankie Boyle comes out with.
If you're a mild conservative, then people are like, oh, you bigot. Oh, my God. Oh, you don't want communist revolution. What's wrong with you? And yeah, Frankie Boyle doing his man. Like, thing is, Frankie Boyle used to be really funny. He did all these really cruel jokes. Like that joke about Jordan, and Harvey Price. He said that Jordan went out with a kickboxer because she needed somebody strong enough to stop Harvey from raping her. That's like, man, that is problematic on so many levels. It's a killer line. It's such a funny line, but it's so problematic. I'm like literally fucking about 5 levels.
But how can someone like Frankie Boyle moralise? Because he's always joking about rape and paedophilia.
He's not anymore. The thing is, man, Frankie Boyle is like,
has he changed?
As soon as all the woke stuff came in, I think he smelt the way things were going, and he surrounded himself. He built this armor plating, like when you see those Russian tanks that have covered themselves in like in steel plating and stuff to protect themselves from drones. He's done the same thing. He's created this hedgehog tank, putting all these woke comedians around him. He had Sophie Duker and all these other comedians on talking about how we need to destroy capitalism, and all the Black Lives Matter bollocks. And he's kind of disappeared from the public eye a bit, but that was protection. I think. Right. I'm not sure that Frankie Boyle, because he's a smart guy and he's a very acerbic guy who, gets behind the facade and gets to the truth of things. So I'm sure he doesn't believe it. I'm sure it was just he didn't want to be dragged over the coals. He didn't want to have a struggle session where he was castigated as a bigot. So he clung to that life raft of wokeism, and he's not funny anymore.
Right? No. Oh, he's lost his funny bones a long time ago. But Ricky Gervais has recently been getting backlash for his underground posts. Yeah. But the thing is, because now people have got AI and they can change the slogan, what's actually on the banner, I don't know what his original banner was that created the backlash. There was something about having a stab vest or a rape kit, and there's been all sorts of, one-liners. And the sad thing is, they're not just funny, they're correct. You do need a stab vest. You can't wear your watch. You do need to protect yourself from rape. You should be carrying CS gas if you're a woman. You shouldn't be walking around in the dark.
Yeah.
But I don't know what he actually said that's got him in trouble, and, who would object to that?
Yeah. It's great though, man. It's got everybody talking about Dutch Barn. We're saying the words Dutch Barn vodka right now. Hopefully he's going to send you a crate. But yeah, man, like Ricky Gervais. And Ricky Gervais is somebody who, man, he stayed funny and he stayed, twisting the, and looking behind the facade and picking it apart. Like his stuff, and it's so powerful because he's, obviously such a huge comedian. Like his stuff about, when he was talking about the transgender stuff, and he's like, what do you mean? What do you mean she's not a woman? Look at her pronouns. That kind of stuff. It's so funny when he's talking about illegal immigration and he's like, oh, I love illegal immigrants. You know what I mean? I love, that boat turning up and, like, I was so sad when there's none on it. And then, like, I look under the truck and he directs the guy to Gary Lineker's house or whatever. He's so great at talking about these issues. But the ultimate responsibility for TfL and the marketing on the underground lies with Sadiq Khan. And, he's overseeing this... this complete demographic change in London. If you go back, 60 years or whatever, London was, basically mostly white. If you go back, to World War II, it was pretty much all white, and it's had this rapid demographic change, especially in the last few years, where white Brits are now a minority in their own capital city. And Sadiq Khan is doing this because he knows those people will vote for him. It's what Labour have tried to do on a bigger scale. People say, Fraser Nelson's always like, oh, actually, London's safer than it's ever been. Man, I don't believe that's true. Because I know when I worked in criminal intelligence, the violence was overwhelmingly between gangs. It was, these kids were killing each other. But to be honest, like, so what? If you're going to be some sort of gangbanging idiot, then yeah, you deserve to kill each other. And the problem that we had was because they could get guns, but they couldn't get the ammunition. So much of the ammunition was homemade. So it was really inaccurate and rubbish. So it would, like, when they shot at somebody, it would like spin off and kill a random bystander in a chicken shop or whatever. Sorry for profiling the chicken shop there. But, like, I was thinking back then, if we could just give them better ammunition, it would increase their accuracy and they'd just kill each other and there'd be no random bystander. Why do we arm these gangsters? You know what I mean? But yeah, no, you can't do that. Whereas now I think the violence in London, I think there's much more, like you're more likely to have random attacks. Like in Birmingham the other day, there was that lassie, completely unprovoked, stabbed in the neck at a bus stop. She's like 32, 34 years old.
Yeah.
Horrible, you know, just some random scrote who did it.
And that was for absolutely no reason, unprovoked.
No reason apart from, you know, the disintegration of civil society and, you know, the end of a high trust society. So, you know, now we can have, you know, we've got violence on our streets that there wouldn't have been violence like that before.
How do you think this all ends? Where are we going to end up?
Man, as much as like Keir Starmer's all like, oh, Britain's always been about being kindness and compassionate and being a pussy and just letting people do whatever they want and, you know, letting a stronger culture come in from overseas, this alien culture and dominate. You know, Britain's never been about that. We've always been a fighting nation. We've always, you know, fought wars against much bigger countries. We've gone over, we've taken control of other countries. We ran a third of the world. The British Empire was, you know, like this incredible empire. Everybody's like, oh, it's so cruel, it's so horrible. No, it was mostly a sort of beneficial empire. Obviously, there was some cruelty, you know, it was the old days. There's bound to be some cruelty. You know, it was men running it. But we generated a huge amount of wealth. Everybody says, oh, you extracted the wealth. No, we generated wealth for those countries. We gave them infrastructure and railways and the bureaucracy to run a country. We gave them democracy. Look at India now, absolutely powering ahead. And man, I think Britain's at a turning point, an inflection point, where we're not just going to assert ourselves and take back control of our own country. We're also going to go to the Horn of Africa. We're going to go to these places. If the argument is that, you know, well, these poor men in the Horn of Africa, they need to come to Britain because they're at risk of persecution in the Horn of Africa. We're going to go to the Horn of Africa and we're going to run it properly. And we're going to bring back the British Empire.
So that's where you think we're going?
That's the sort of natural progression. You know, I think Britain's going to reassert itself. Like, never underestimate the power of, you know, a small group of British people to get organised and run things. And, you know, we've sort of, I think people on the right have taken their eye off the ball and let the sort of the busybodies, the lefties, run things for so long. Only about, you know, 10, 15% of the population is, you know, genuinely a sort of progressive leftist. They're completely at odds with the rest of the population. So we're gonna take back control from those people, and it's probably, you know, just as well it's happening. The sooner, you know, Keir Starmer falls, the better. And we're gonna take back control of the country and we're gonna make it great again. Yeah,
the sooner Starmer falls, the better. And with any luck, flat on his face. Before I ask you the final question, and it's a good question, it's important, and I'm also going to ask you. I'm going to ask you about the next guest I'm just about to interview. But before we get to there, and people will want to listen to this question, especially if they're going to watch the next guest, which they will.
Yeah.
Where can people, I'm going to put all your links in the description here, but where can people come and find your work?
So I do streams on Patreon. I've got a YouTube channel, and that's probably my main two things. Like I do, you know, social media now as well, but like, YouTube, Patreon, and Twitter as well for my tweets. I do videos on YouTube all the time, and Patreon for the streams.
Okay, so I'll put all of those links in the description. Brilliant. So please do go and find Leo. I know this hasn't been a particularly funny interview, but he is hilarious and he's very kind and he's got a great brain and some good takes on situations that make you change the way you think about it. And that's what it's all about. Seeing things from different people's eyes. And stick for this last question because you'll be watching the next podcast. I know it when you hear who I've got coming on. I'm going where people fear to tread, but like and subscribe to this channel as well because it helps me get better guests on like I have today with Leo.
I thought you could say better guests than this guy.
No, like you. But, so, ethno-nationalism.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on ethnats? And if I had Steve Laws sitting opposite me, what would you ask him? Because he seems to be the kingpin of the ethnats on X.
Man, so there's a couple of things with Steve Laws. I'd say, you know, don't you think you're sort of alienating a lot of people? Because the thing is, man, we all grew up in a sort of multicultural society, and we've all got mates who are, you know, from all different, you know, shades of skin, all different kinds of background and stuff. So I don't want to see, you know, my mates Darius and Nico having to worry about getting deported because, you know, they're like Darius's dad came from Iran or whatever. I think it's a hard sell. Ethno-nationalism is going to be an extremely hard sell in Britain. And also, I don't think it's the answer. Genuinely, you know, there's so many people who are integrated and are true patriots. Like my uncle's Indian, and he's like more patriotic than me. You know what I mean? He loves his country. I know there's a few sort of high-profile moaners like Dr. Shola Mos Shog Bang Bing Bong or Narinder Kaur, who, you know, constantly moan about Britain. And it's like every time I see it, I'm like, well, why are you here then? You know what I mean? Like, go and live in a country you like. But, like, I don't think ethno-nationalism is the answer, and I don't think you're ever going to be able to sell it to more than, like, you know, 5-10% of the population as a viable thing. I mean, I've met Steve Laws. I don't agree with him. He's called me stuff before. I've called him stuff. I think I called him. I said, you look like Dylan Mulvaney when she takes her makeup off. Sorry, Dylan Mulvaney when he takes his makeup off. I don't know why I said. Why did I use the pronouns there? I'm so progressive.
You fell for it. You fell into their trap.
Yeah.
The progressive trap. We've got him. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, no, he looks like Dylan Mulvaney when he takes his makeup off. And like, if you're gonna deport people, like, at least be strong enough to deport someone yourself. You know what I mean? Be strong enough to get, you know, some Eritrean guy in a headlock and, you know, drag him down to the deportation boat. You know what I mean? Like, but, you know, on the other hand, you know, even though I disagree with him, I can sort of see where he's coming from. I don't think he's some sort of swivel-eyed lunatic. I think he's somebody who cares passionately about his country. He's got a family and stuff, and he cares about the future of his country. And he can see the direction of travel, and he can see because he lives down on the coast, doesn't he? So he sees the people coming in.
I don't know much about him. All I know is he insulted me on X.
Yeah.
So rather than respond, I said, "You sound like an interesting person."
Yeah.
Or "You'd be an interesting guest. The door's open."
Yeah, yeah.
And then he took me up on the offer. So we'll see in a minute.
Yeah, yeah. And I think this is what people on the left don't understand. Like people like Steve Laws, even though he's obviously, you know, way more extreme than, you know, someone like Tommy Robinson.
But they hate each other.
Yeah.
Steve Laws hates Tommy because Tommy isn't extreme.
Tommy isn't an ethno-nationalism.
Tommy's not
Nationalist.
right-wing enough.
Yeah.
Steve Laws doesn't like me because I'm not right-wing enough.
He doesn't like me because I'm not right-wing enough.
So
you know what I mean?
We've got the left that hate us because they think we're far-right, and the far-right hate us because we're not actually far-right. We're in a bad place. No. Fucking hated by everyone.
No, but I think everybody is persuadable, and I think Steve is persuadable. I think, you know, he's not you can tell when somebody's just mental. You know what I mean? And they've got that swivel-eyed like craziness, and Steve doesn't have that. I think, you know, he's probably starting to think now that, you know, he's not just shouting into the wind. Now that you know, the country is moving to the right. And it's going to be, you know, actioning more right-wing things. And you're seeing across Europe, you know, a lot of countries are now remigrating. People like Germany is sending Syrians back. I think he's gonna probably moderate his views to a more, you know, reasonable, you know, plausible level. So, you know, and I think you get people out there who, like there's Sundar Katwala, who, you know, says that I'm a swivel-eyed lunatic racist, which is just, it's kind of adorable that he's such an idiot. And obviously he thinks, you know, he thinks Steve Laws is like, you know, the Antichrist descendant. Well, not even an Antichrist, because that's sticking to a Christian patriarchal culture. So, you know, but he thinks, you know, Steve Laws is the ultimate evil. And you know, I don't think Steve Laws is. I think Steve Laws is a reasonable guy who's, you know, let himself get to
overexcited.
Overexcited into some crazy places. But again, you know, look at the situation the country's in. Look at what Steve Laws has seen with his own eyes. You know, I can understand that path. I can understand why. You know, like it's very difficult to look at read the Grooming Gang transcripts and have any feeling apart from that. You know what I mean? You really have to work hard to, you know, to contain your revulsion and your hatred for, you know, a culture that would justify that.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. But back to you. Anything you want to round this up on? Anything you want to say off your own back? What would your final message to the masses be?
Oh, fuck, man.
If you were PM.
If I was PM, man, like, honestly, democracy is in free fall in the UK. Like, we've seen, like in Ballymena and Epping, places like that, We've seen people try and engage with the democratic process, go to political leaders, go to the council, go to police and say, like, look, we've got this problem. We want to resolve it, whether it's a migrant hotel or, the gangster families that are moved into Ballymena. And, they say, we've got this problem, we want to resolve it. And they get told, no, what are you talking about? You're racist bigot. This is, these people are enriching you. This is what you're having. You don't understand why it's good for you and good for society, but we're imposing it. That's not democracy. That's an elective dictatorship. That's some imposed by an elite. So we're seeing then, and the court system backs it up. The court system, sided with the foreign migrants in Epping and said that the hotel must still stay open and used for illegal migrants. So we've got activist judges using foreign laws to side with foreign people over the British people in Epping. So then people take to the streets. So in Epping, they protest. There's threats made against the hotel. In Ballymena, they took to the streets and they actually burnt the houses out of the problematic families that they wanted gone from the area. And people say this is just mindless thuggery. I mean, there's video footage of people in Ballymena moving residents' cars out the way so they don't get burnt. So it wasn't mindless. It was extremely targeted, and obviously violence of any sort, property damage, stuff like that is horrific and, shouldn't happen. But the government is sort of creating a system where it's the only way that people can make things happen, can achieve their goals. And in Ballymena, it undeniably helped them achieve their goals. And that's a very dangerous message for the government to send out. The government is basically encouraging and incentivizing, this violence, incentivizing direct action. So what I'd say to the government is do what people want. I know it's a radical concept for a democracy, but do what people want and govern for the British people. Don't govern for your far left ideals. Don't govern for illegal migrants because they say they're asylum seekers. Govern for the British people. And then you won't have the problems you're having. But they obviously won't.
Yeah. Leo, as always, thoroughly enjoy your company. I wonder where we're going to be in a year's time. I dare say we'll be sat back here and we can recap over what the hell's gone on. And I'm hoping that things improve. But at this stage, I'm not overly optimistic.
Yeah.
But to round it on a positive note, it's been a joy. You look $1 million. Good to see you again. And I can confirm that nor you or I are funded by anyone other than a few Google ads if we're lucky enough to get monetised.
Yeah.
Certainly not the Jews.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, but if Mossad want to give me money, I'm all here. Yeah. Or if Qatar, if Hamas want to fund me, I'm willing to change my opinions. Man, I'll do that. You know what I
mean? Easily swayed, easily bought. Yeah. You'll never buy me. Good health, brother.
Cheers, man.
See you again.